The sun was low over the burned hills of Elrond's Reach. Wind moved slowly across the black soil, carrying ash in silence. Kayla walked alone, her footsteps light and quiet. She was the last Cerulean left in the city, or maybe on the planet. Her people were gone, their homes turned to dust, their voices lost in fire. The sky had burned weeks ago, and now only the ground held the story. Kayla kept walking. Her long coat was torn and stained, and her hands shook from hunger. She carried a small pack with medical supplies and a tiny piece of fruit she had saved. Every sound made her stop and listen. Once, she heard something behind a broken wall, but it was only a bird with one wing. She had been trained as a healer. Her hands once saved lives, but now they only touched ruins. She had not spoken in days. There was no one left to talk to. Sometimes she whispered her sister's name, just to remember how a voice sounded. The silence made her feel like she was sinking. Then she heard something new. It was a deep hum, not from nature. She dropped to the ground and crawled behind a rock. Her sharp eyes caught movement. Humans! 4 of them. They wore armor and carried weapons. One of them scanned the area. Kayla held her breath. She didn't know if they were friends or enemies. Her people had fought the humans in the past, but no one was sure why the war had started. One of the humans moved closer. He was taller than the others and had a calm face. His name was Eric Holloway, though Kayla didn't know that yet. He raised a hand to signal the others to stop. He looked around, then slowly turned toward the rock where Kayla hid. "I know you're there," he said quietly. Kayla stayed still. He didn't point his weapon. He took off his helmet. His face looked tired, but not angry. "I won't hurt you," he said. "You need help?" She peeked over the rock. Her eyes were large and bright. Her face was thin, her silver-blue skin marked with dust. Eric knelt down and pulled a water bottle from his belt. He rolled it across the ground to her. Kayla stared at it, then looked at him. He nodded. She picked up the bottle slowly and drank. The water was warm but clean. She felt tears rise but pushed them back. She stood up slowly, still watching him. "My name's Eric," he said. "You alone?" Kayla nodded. The other soldiers were nervous. One whispered, "Are we really helping a Cerulean?" Eric looked at them and said, "She's not a threat. Look at her." They didn't argue, but they stayed back. Eric walked toward Kayla and held out a small food bar. She took it, her fingers brushing his glove. Her hand trembled. "You're safe now," he said. Kayla didn't answer. She didn't trust her voice. But she followed them when they turned back toward the hills. Her feet were sore and her legs weak, but she kept walking. The humans didn't talk much, and that made her feel less afraid. They reached a small outpost as the sun dropped behind the mountains. The base was built from metal and dirt, half buried to hide it from the sky. A few guards watched from towers. Lights blinked on in the twilight. Inside the base, the air was cooler. Kayla looked around, alert but quiet. Some soldiers stared. One even asked, "What's she doing here?" Eric answered, "She's with me." He brought her to a corner of the medical room. A young nurse gave her a blanket. Kayla sat down, holding it tight around her shoulders. Her eyes never stopped moving. Later, Eric returned with some soup. He set it down beside her. "I don't know your name," he said. Kayla looked at him. Her voice was soft, cracked from silence. "Kayla," she said. Eric smiled gently. "Kayla, good to meet you." That night, Kayla sat awake, her back to the wall. The blanket helped, but the cold inside her stayed. She watched the humans sleep. They seemed strange and loud, but not cruel. When Eric passed her on his way to bed, he gave her a nod. She nodded back. It wasn't trust. Not yet, but it was something. For the first time in a long while, Kayla didn't feel completely alone. Kayla stayed at the human outpost. The walls were made of metal and dirt, and the air inside smelled of oil and old food. It was not home, but it was safe. She kept to herself and said very little. The other soldiers didn't talk to her much. Some didn't trust her. A few gave her cold looks, like she was an enemy. Kayla understood. The war had left deep marks on both sides. Eric tried to make her feel welcome. He brought her meals and found her warmer clothes. He even gave her a small notebook and a pencil. In case you want to write or draw, he said. Kayla nodded and took it, though she wasn't sure what to do with it. She watched Eric a lot. He worked hard, helping others, fixing equipment, and running patrols. He smiled at people and made jokes, though his eyes often looked tired. When he passed by Kayla, he always gave her a small smile. She started to feel a little less cold inside. One day, Eric sat beside her during lunch. He handed her a cup of tea. "You remind me of someone," he said. Kayla looked at him. "My sister?" She didn't talk much either, but when she did, she said things that mattered. Kayla sipped the tea. It was bitter but warm. "I had a sister too," she said. Her voice was soft, and her words came slow. Her name was Lyra. Eric looked at her. "What happened to her?" Kayla stared at her hands. "She was in a city when the sky burned. I was far. I heard her last message. Then nothing." Eric said nothing for a moment. Then he said, "I'm sorry." Kayla nodded. It was the first time someone had said that to her. After that, they spoke more. Not much, but a little each day. Kayla told Eric about the floating cities of her people, how they lived with the wind and grew gardens in the sky. She told him about their songs, the way they sang to the stars. Eric told her about Earth, about rivers and trees and snow. He told her how he used to walk in the forest with his dog, how the snow would crunch under his boots. Kayla liked those stories. They made her feel like the world was bigger than war. One evening, a soldier brought Eric a broken scanner. "The tech guys are busy. Can you fix this?" Eric handed it to Kayla. "She might be able to." The soldier looked unsure. Kayla took the scanner and opened it. Her fingers moved quickly, sure and calm. In minutes, it buzzed back to life. "Thanks," the soldier said, surprised. After that, others started bringing her tools to fix. She didn't speak much, but her hands worked well. Slowly, people began to see her not as an enemy, but as someone who could help. One morning, Kayla stood outside, looking at the sunrise. The light touched her face, and for a moment, she closed her eyes. She remembered the light from her home, how it was soft and golden. Eric walked up to her. "You okay?" "It's quiet," she said. "I like the quiet." "Me too," he said. They stood in silence for a while. Then Eric said, "We have patrol duty tomorrow. You don't have to come, but if you want to see more of the land, you could." Kayla thought for a moment. "I will come." The next day, she joined the patrol. The land outside the outpost was dry and empty, but it felt different with Eric beside her. They passed ruins of old buildings, scorched trees, and burned machines. Once, they saw a small animal run between rocks. Kayla smiled. "First living thing I've seen out here," Eric said. "It survived," Kayla said. "Like us." They stopped at a hill and looked over the land. In the distance, Kayla saw smoke. "Could be raiders," Eric said. "We'll report it." On the way back, they found a small garden hidden between rocks. Someone had planted vegetables there. Kayla knelt and touched a green leaf. "Who would plant here?" Eric asked. "Someone who wanted to hope," Kayla said. Back at the base, Kayla started drawing in her notebook. She drew the garden, the small animal, and the sunrise. She even drew Eric, smiling under the sun. She didn't say much, but Eric noticed. And each time he passed her, she no longer looked away. Bit by bit, the silence around her began to fade. The morning air was cold and sharp. Clouds hung low over the hills. Kayla walked beside Eric and 3 other soldiers on patrol. The land around them was quiet, but something felt strange. The birds were gone. Even the wind seemed still. Eric gave a short signal, and they moved slower. Everyone held their weapons tight. Kayla didn't carry a gun. She had a small scanner and a first aid kit. Her eyes watched everything. They reached an old road, broken and cracked. Then they saw the smoke. A thin column rose into the sky. Eric pointed. That wasn't there yesterday. They moved toward it. As they got closer, they heard a noise like metal hitting metal, then shouting. "Raiders." Eric motioned for the group to spread out. Kayla stayed behind a large rock. Her heart beat fast, but her hand stayed steady. She could see the raiders 7 of them, trying to open a supply crate. A small human outpost had been attacked. The gate was broken, and fire burned in one corner. The soldiers moved in fast. Shots rang out. The raiders fired back. Kayla stayed low, her eyes searching for the wounded. One soldier was hit. He fell behind a wall, shouting in pain. Kayla ran to him, her steps light and quick. She slid beside him and opened her kit. Blood ran from his leg. "Stay still," she said. He looked at her with wide eyes. "You're Sir Elian." "Yes," she said, "but I'm also a medic." She stopped the bleeding and wrapped the leg. The soldier groaned but nodded. "Thanks." Eric and the others pushed the raiders back. One of them ran close to Kayla, a weapon in hand. She froze, but then Eric was there, knocking the attacker down. He fired once. The raider didn't move again. Kayla looked at Eric. He was breathing hard. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "You saved me." "You saved him," he said, pointing to the wounded soldier. The fight ended soon after. 3 raiders were down. The others fled. The soldiers checked the area, while Kayla helped 2 more wounded men. Back at the base, Kayla cleaned her hands. Blood stained her sleeves. She felt tired but steady. The soldier she helped earlier gave her a nod. "Didn't think I'd be thanking a Sir Elian," he said. Kayla gave a small smile. "Didn't think I'd be saving a human." Later, Eric found her near the storage area. He handed her a small bag. "Food supplies. For you. You earned it." She took the bag and sat beside him. They didn't speak for a while. Then Eric said, "You were brave today." Kayla looked at him. "I was scared." Brave and scared can be the same thing. She thought about that. Maybe. A few days passed. People at the base looked at her differently now. Some nodded when they saw her. One soldier asked her to fix a broken radio. Another offered her a cup of coffee. She still felt like a stranger, but not an enemy. One night, a storm rolled in. The rain hit the roof hard, and thunder shook the walls. Kayla couldn't sleep. She walked the halls, her blanket around her shoulders. She found Eric sitting near the window, watching the rain. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. She shook her head. He moved over. "Sit." She sat beside him. The window was fogged, but she could still see the flashes of lightning. "Storms scare me," she said. "Not the sound. The memory." "Of the attack?" She nodded. "The sky burned. Like this, but worse." Eric looked down. "I wasn't there. I don't know what that felt like. But I've seen cities fall. Friends lost. It doesn't leave you." Kayla turned to him. "How do you live with it?" "One day at a time," he said, "and by holding on to what's good, even small things." She looked at the rain, then back at him. "You're one of the good things," she said. Eric was quiet. Then he smiled. "So are you." The storm raged outside, but inside it was quiet. Kayla leaned her head on Eric's shoulder. He didn't move. He just sat there, still and warm. In that moment, Kayla felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Safe. The days grew warmer. The hills near the outpost turned green again. Flowers started to bloom in small patches. Kayla spent more time outside. She walked the paths around the base, stopping to draw plants in her notebook. She didn't speak much, but the silence between her and Eric had become comfortable. One morning, a message came to the outpost. It spoke of a strange energy signal coming from the northern mountains. Command wanted a team to check it. Eric was chosen to lead the group. He asked for Kayla to join. At first, the commander said no. "She's not a soldier," he said. "She's more than that," Eric replied. "She saved us. She could help again." After some thought, the commander agreed. Kayla packed her bag. She took medical tools, her scanner, and the notebook. She didn't speak as they prepared to leave, but Eric saw the way her hand shook. He gently touched her arm. "You don't have to come." "I want to," she said. They traveled for 2 days. The group walked through hills and across rocky ground. They slept under the stars and ate small meals. Kayla shared stories about the land. She told Eric how the Cyrilians once lived in harmony with nature. They never built high walls. Their homes floated and moved with the wind. Eric listened. He liked hearing her voice. It was soft but full of meaning. She even smiled once when he joked about riding a flying house. On the third day, the weather changed. A heavy fog covered the ground. They climbed higher into the mountains, following the signal. Kayla's scanner picked up strange readings. "This is Cerulean tech," she said. "Old. Maybe hidden during the war." Eric nodded. "What kind of tech?" "I don't know yet." As they moved closer, the ground shook. A landslide started without warning. Rocks fell from above. The group scattered. Eric shouted orders. Kayla slipped and rolled down a slope. When the dust settled, Eric looked around. "Where's Kayla?" One soldier pointed. "She fell. Down there." Eric didn't wait. He slid down the rocks, calling her name. He found her lying near a tree. Her leg was cut and her arm twisted. "Kayla!" Her eyes opened. "Eric!" "I'm here," he said. "Hold on." He checked her wounds. "You're lucky. Nothing too deep. Can you move?" She shook her head. "My leg." Eric looked up the hill. The others were too far. The fog was too thick. He lifted her gently. "I've got you." Kayla leaned against his chest. Her hands held his jacket tight. "You came for me?" "Of course," he said. He carried her through the trees, step by step. The path was rough, and the cold air cut deep, but he didn't stop. Kayla rested her head on his shoulder. "You remind me of Lyra," she whispered. "My sister. She once carried me like this." Eric didn't speak. He just held her closer. They found a small cave and stayed there for the night. Eric made a fire. He wrapped Kayla's leg and gave her water. "Why do you help me so much?" she asked. Eric sat beside her. "Because you matter. Because you're not just someone who needs help. You're someone who makes this place better." Kayla looked at the flames. "I didn't think anyone would ever say that to me again." The next morning, the fog began to lift. The team found them and helped bring Kayla back up the hill. Together, they reached the source of the signal. It was an old Cerulean research lab hidden inside the mountain. The doors opened when Kayla touched the panel. Lights came on. Inside, the air was cold and dry. They found machines and data files. Kayla moved slowly, her legs still weak, but her hands were sure. She read the files and grew quiet. "These files show humans and Ceruleans working together," she said. "Before the war." Eric leaned over her shoulder. "What does it mean?" Kayla looked at him. "Maybe the war started from lies. Maybe someone wanted us to fight." They copied the files and packed the data. On the way back, Kayla rode in a small carrier, but she stayed awake the whole time. Eric walked beside her, his hands sometimes brushing hers. She didn't pull away. For the first time, Kayla began to believe that peace was not just a dream. It could be real. And maybe, just maybe, she could be part of it. The journey back to the outpost was slow. Kayla's legs still hurt, and the path through the mountains was rough. Eric stayed close to her the whole time. He helped her climb small hills and kept her warm during the cold nights. The others in the group respected her more now. They saw her not just as an alien, but as someone who had saved lives and found something important. When they reached the base, the commander met them at the gate. Eric handed him the data they found in the old lab. The commander looked serious. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. Kayla nodded. "It's all in the files." There were teams of humans and Ceruleans working together before the war. The files also mentioned something strange. A third group, one that didn't want peace. Eric added, "They could cause a war on purpose. We need to know more." The commander frowned. "We'll look into it. But be careful. Not everyone wants this truth to come out." Kayla stayed in the medical room to rest. She read more of the data files each day. Eric visited her often. He brought her meals, asked questions, and listened to her explain the science and the warnings in the files. "This could change everything," Kayla said. "If people know we worked together before, maybe they'll stop fighting." "Let's make sure they hear it," Eric said. But the danger wasn't over. One night, the base alarm went off. Raiders were coming. Not just a few, dozens of them. They wanted the data. They knew what it could do. Eric and the other soldiers got ready. Kayla helped in the medical room, preparing supplies and bandages. But when the first blast hit the outer wall, she grabbed her scanner and ran toward the command center. "You shouldn't be here," the officer said. "I can help," she said. "They're using Cerulean tech. I can shut it down." Eric gave her a headset. "I'll protect you. Just tell us what to do." Kayla worked fast. She used her scanner to find the weak points in the Raiders' gear. She gave the soldiers clear directions. "Hit the left side. That's where the energy pack is." The battle lasted hours. Smoke filled the air. The ground shook with each explosion. Eric stayed close to Kayla, guarding her from flying debris and enemy fire. At one point, a raider reached the command room. He aimed his weapon at Kayla. She froze. Then Eric tackled him, knocking the gun away. They struggled on the floor. Kayla grabbed a tool and hit the raider on the back. He went down. Eric stood up, breathing hard. "Thanks." "We're even now," Kayla said. Finally, the raiders pulled back. The soldiers cheered. Kayla sat down, her hands shaking. Eric knelt beside her. "You did it," he said. "We did it," she replied. The next day, the base was quiet. Repairs had started. People were tired but hopeful. The data was safe. The commander said it would be sent to the capital. "People need to see this," he said. "It's time to end this war." News spread quickly. Other outposts heard about the files. Messages came in from ships and stations asking for copies. Some leaders said they wanted to talk. Some even asked to meet Kayla. She felt nervous but proud. Eric told her, "You've done more than survive. You've changed the story." One evening, as the sun set over the hills, Kayla walked outside. Eric joined her. They stood in silence for a while. "I used to think I had no place left," Kayla said. "No people, no future. What do you think now?" Eric asked. Kayla looked at the sky. "Now, I think maybe this world isn't just a place of loss. Maybe it's also a place where something new can grow." Eric gently took her hand. She didn't pull away. "You're not alone anymore," he said. She smiled. "I know." In the days that followed, Kayla began writing down the old stories of her people. She taught the soldiers some of the songs she remembered. At night, they sat around a fire listening. Sometimes she sang. Sometimes she just listened to the wind. The war wasn't over. Not yet. But change had started. One message, one team, and one strange friendship had made the difference. Kayla knew there was more work to do, but she was ready. And she wasn't doing it alone. More days passed, and the outpost became busier. Messages kept coming in. Some leaders wanted to know more about the data Kayla had found. Others wanted to ignore it. A few even called it fake. But there were also voices of support. People, both human and Cerulean, began asking questions. Why had they been fighting? Who had started the war? What else had been hidden? Eric stayed close to Kayla. He helped her answer messages and sort through more data. The files from the mountain lab had names, pictures, and even recordings of humans and Cyrilians working side by side. One day, Kayla found a video of her sister, Lyra. In the video, Lyra spoke to a human scientist. They laughed together while testing some machine. Kayla watched it again and again, her eyes filled with tears. She believed in peace, Kayla whispered. Eric sat beside her. "Now you carry her hope." The commander called for a meeting. The soldiers gathered in the main hall. "We've been told to hold the data," he said. "Some high officers don't want it released. They fear to cause chaos." Eric stood up. "Hiding the truth is what caused the war. If we stay silent, it will never end." Kayla also stood. Her voice was calm. "The truth is not a weapon. It is a chance to heal. We must let others decide for themselves." There was silence in the room. Then someone clapped. Others joined. The commander nodded slowly. "If you're willing to take the risk, do it. But be careful." Kayla and Eric worked with the tech team to send the data to open networks. They sent copies to planets, ships, and outposts. It took hours. When it was done, Kayla leaned back and closed her eyes. "It's out there now," she said. "No one can stop it." Soon, the world began to change. News channels showed the videos and files. Some leaders called for peace talks. Some cities lowered their shields. In a few places, humans and Cyrilians met in the streets and spoke without weapons. But there were also angry voices, groups that didn't want peace. Some people shouted that Kayla was a liar. A few even sent threats. Eric was worried. You need to be safe. You should stay inside. Kayla shook her head. I will not hide. Not now. He didn't argue. Instead, he walked beside her everywhere she went. One evening, a large transport ship landed near the outpost. A peace group from the capital arrived. They wanted to meet Kayla. A human woman in a blue coat stepped forward. I'm Helena Price. We've read your message. We believe it can bring change. Kayla nodded. It is not just my message. Many work together. Helena smiled. Still, it started with you. We like you to speak at the Capitol. Share your story. Help others understand. Kayla looked at Eric. He nodded. I'll go with you. The trip to the Capitol was long. Kayla had never flown in a human ship before. She watched the stars through the window. They reminded her of her home planet. She remembered the music, the soft lights, and her people's laughter. At the Capitol, crowds waited outside the building. Cameras flashed. People held signs. Some welcomed her. Others held hateful words. Kayla kept walking. Inside, she stood before a large group of leaders. Light shone on her face. She took a deep breath. I am Kayla. I was born on a world that no longer lives. My people sang to the stars. We dreamed of peace, but then came fire. We were told the humans did it. Maybe they were told the same. But I found truth in the mountains. Truth that says we once stood together. She paused. The room was quiet. This war took everything from me. My family, my home, my hope. But then a human gave me water. He gave me a coat. He gave me a hand when I was falling. Kayla looked at Eric in the crowd. He gave me a reason to believe again. Some people clapped. Some wiped their eyes. Others sat in silence. That night, Kayla and Eric walked in the garden behind the building. The air was warm. Flowers glowed under soft lights. You spoke well, Eric said. Kayla smiled. My heart spoke. I only followed. Do you think they'll listen? Some will, and that is enough. They sat on a bench. Eric looked up at the stars. Do you think your people will be proud of you? Kayla nodded. Yes, and maybe, if we keep walking forward, there will be new songs, new voices, a new home. Eric reached for her hand. She took it. They sat together, quiet and strong, while the world began to change around them. Weeks passed after Kayla's speech at the Capitol. More people began talking about peace. Some leaders met to discuss new plans. A few outposts even welcomed both humans and Cyrilians to work together. It was slow, but it was real. Kayla stayed in the Capitol for a while. She helped answer questions from other Cyrilians who were still in hiding. Some of them were afraid, but when they heard her story, they started to believe again. Eric stayed by her side. He helped organize meetings and wrote reports. He didn't like politics, but he stayed because Kayla did. One morning, Kayla stood in a large garden near the Peace Building. Flowers grew in long rows, and birds flew low through the trees. A group of children played nearby. They were both human and Cerulean. They ran, laughed, and shared toys. Kayla watched them for a long time. She smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. Eric walked up beside her. You're thinking of your home? Kayla nodded. Yes, it's gone, but I feel it sometimes. In the songs, in the wind, in these children. Eric looked at the kids. They don't care about war. They just want to live. That is why we keep going, she said. Later that day, they were invited to return to the outpost. The commander wanted their help setting up a new joint base, a place for both species to live and work together. Kayla agreed right away. She missed the open land, the sky, and the quiet. When they arrived, things looked different. The old base had been repaired and expanded. New buildings were being built by human and Cerulean workers. There were gardens, schools, and even a small market. The flag that flew over the gate was new. It had symbols from both worlds. Kayla walked through the base with Eric. People greeted her with smiles and friendly waves. Some called her Dr. Kayla. Others simply nodded with respect. She saw a young Cerulean girl helping an old human man fix a machine. She saw two boys chasing each other with sticks, laughing in both languages. "This feels like the beginning," Kayla said. "It is," Eric replied. They were given a small home on the edge of the base. It had a clear view of the mountains. The inside was simple but warm. Kayla placed her notebook on a shelf and hung a small drawing she had made of the garden where she and Eric first sat after the battle. Each day, Kayla worked in the new clinic. She taught others what she knew and learned from the human doctors. Eric trained new recruits and helped with security. But in the evenings, they walked together under stars. One night, a message came. The leaders from both sides had agreed to sign a peace agreement. They wanted Kayla to be there when it happened, not as a soldier, not as a scientist, but as a witness to what hope could do. Kayla stood in the center of the large meeting room as the two leaders signed the papers. Cameras flashed. People cheered. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her presence was enough. After the event, many people came to her. They thanked her. Some gave her small gifts. Others just hugged her. Later, when the room was quiet, Kayla stood alone by a window. Eric walked up and stood beside her. "It's done," he said. Kayla nodded. "The war is over, at least on paper." "There will still be work to do," Eric said. "I know," she replied. "But now we build. We heal." He took her hand. "And we do it together." Kayla looked at him. "Until a human pulled me into his arms, I had no one left. But now, I have more than I ever dreamed." Eric smiled. "So do I." They walked out into the night. Stars shining above them, their steps light and full of purpose. Far away, on another world, a child would one day read their story. And that child would grow up believing not in war, but in the power of kindness, courage, and truth. And that would be the greatest peace of all.